Hello and welcome to an Infinity the Game Battle Report video. In this video, we'll be playing 3 games using Dashat Company, and all 3 of these games were played at a recent one-day event in Canberra. This is part of the Timfinity series, and for those who don't know the Canberra scene, Timfinity is a regular every 4 or 5 weeks, just one day, usually 3 rounds, event that we run just as a regular event series. This is the 35th Timfinity, so we've been running it since mid-N3, and it's a bit of a local institution at this point. I am usually the organizer of these, which means whether or not I get to play is a little bit random. I will get to play if it makes numbers. But for this one, I got to play all 3 rounds. So this is the list that I ran for the day, and I literally wrote this on the morning of. It's not necessarily the most efficient or optimized list possible, but I've been playing a bunch of Dashat Company recently, which you may have noticed if you've seen a recent video on this channel. And this is the continuation of a few ideas I had and wanted to test. I've used a Magari Brigade with Dashat Company quite a lot, and I've spoken about how a Magari Brigade in Dashat Company, she's not an efficiently costed tag. She is very expensive because of the 360 visor, and even in those games where the 360 visor is worthwhile and maybe even definitive in terms of the result of the game, she is really, really expensive because she pays a huge amount for that cost, for that piece of equipment, and at the same time being very, very hard to deploy and sort of more difficult to play because of her base size. On the other hand, Dashat Company can also run some fairly interesting links, but they are link teams that I haven't had a chance to really play around with in large numbers until recently. The thing about Dashat Company links is that they've really gone through sort of phases over time. When the company was released in mid-N3, they were all about wildcard, bounty hunters, force multiplying, single Zuyongs. It was extremely efficient, and it fit really well into the N3 paradigm of like 18 to 20 troopers in a list. When N4 came out and we had that contraction in list sizes, you could fall back on still running sort of a quite link-intensive Dashat, but you had to change what you did a little bit, and you couldn't sort of spam the same order pools that you could with AVA3 for Noose and tractor mules, etc. Fast forward to present, and things are even more interesting. So the big and obvious change is the Fire Team update, which has cut kind of mixed links down from their upper limit ballistic skill. So in the old days, this would have been a ballistic skill 16 Zuyong. Now it's ballistic skill 14 because it's in a mixed 5-person link. That's really how Dashat Company has to play. You can't really, Zuyong by themselves are not worth building into a 5-person link, but because Dashat Company have wildcard diggers now, you can still make a link that is comprised of pretty much models you would almost all individually play anyway, at least in the context of being linked. So in this case, what we're running is a Zuyong core with a TAC-aware HMG, a TAC-aware Tinbot -6, and a paramedic, who would be very useful in at least one game. And then we have our 2 diggers. Now this is really only a moderately expensive link, but it is moderately expensive. And so we build a lot of the rest of the list out with the Dashat Company staples, the really cheap, really effective, really good irregulars. So we've got our 2 Libertos, and I've been able to give them both mine layers in this one. We've got Mikmara, who is only kind of cheap at 27 points, but is fantastic, and then 1 Comb Rider. I have a general rule of thumb with Dashat that I don't exceed 5 irregulars, and frankly, that's almost 1 too many as is. It is really hard to run 5 irregular troops effectively with just sort of 4 command tokens, and I don't like paying 4 points for a whole command token on a Golem Lieutenant. But I've gone to 5 in this list just because of the quality of the pieces, and the 5th is a Monstrucker. And so what the Monstrucker is doing is supporting 2 remotes, a Rafik and a Shihab. Now this, I wrote this as a reminder, I wrote this in about 10 minutes on the morning of. In the first draft of this list, this Rafik had a Red Fury, but I could not afford the 6 points to make it into a Red Fury. So I dialed it back to a Rifle Light Shotgun. And I'm actually pretty comfortable having done that. It worked just as well. It's a really good piece. It's the cheapest at 14 points. It's the cheapest one, like Takimoto remote, and the Light Shotgun is still really nice. But then otherwise, what the Monstrucker is doing is supporting a Shihab Total Reaction Bot. There's no Evo hacker to help this thing out. It's in Combat Group 2. It is functionally a very dangerous ARO cheerleader, but I'm on record as saying you have to have hard AROs in your mix, and the Shihab is part of that. Just having a piece that can be in your deployment zone, watch the lines that your opponent might move through the midfield, has just been just super, super valuable. And I've had games where my opponent's total reaction bot has just been an absolute menace. Then they're never easy to take a risk-free fight against, except in very rare circumstances. And I wanted to put one in the Dashat company list. So the rest of the list we're basically just filling out. We've got a Rushi because I wanted to experiment with running a Rushi outside of a link. It could theoretically join the core here, but I didn't want to. I wanted to run it unlinked, just with support from the Nazmat and the Monstrucker. And that would actually work out really, really well. And then we have a Ghulam Lieutenant. Fit in, you can just see it here, through all of the crap on the screen there, a Zensha. Now, this is kind of like a classic company list building problem, where I would like to have had maybe that Monstrucker be a more expensive regular engineer, because you could have a Whip 14 one in Dashat. I would have liked the Rafik. I had the SWC to make it into a Red Fury, but Dashat company has all in the mid-range, pieces that cost less than 30 points but more than 20 points. Like, you have McMurra and the Rushi, and they're in my lists already. You could put in, I could cut a whole lot of points and go down to a much cheaper Lud one, but then I'd have points that I was floating. Like, you tend to have, if you're lucky, your Dashat company list will line up, and if not, you will have to make some kind of sacrifice to fit something a bit more expensive. But Zensha is a pretty cool piece. She's expensive. At 37 points, she's probably too expensive. You can run a 35.1 with a Panzerfaust submachine gun and mines, and that might actually, in some circumstances, be better. I really valued the template, so I wanted to take the template. I also valued the decharges because the missions we were playing would be classified heavy, and I otherwise would not necessarily have decharges in a list. But mostly I wanted that template. Now, having played it, I think the potential to have Panzerfaust on one of those Mimetism 3 markers you have littering the midfield could be really useful and could really fit part of an idea for a Dashat company like Firepower list or something, or AROs. But this worked pretty much fine, and I did write it in 10 minutes. I would be comfortable recommending people play this list. I think it worked really well, so let's get into some games. So in game 1, we're playing Frontline against the Jurisdictional Command of Tunguska. This is an approximate reconstruction of the list. I'm confident I have all the pieces right. I'm not confident I have all the groups right, but it should be broadly accurate. So this is a list that Canberra local Rob Wright played, and which he's been working on for a while. So what we have is we have a 4-model core of Securitate, 2 Interventors, and a Grenzer. So he's not going for the 5-model core. What he's doing here is giving his Interventors 6 cents in his Grenzer +1 burst, and he's stapling it around a Securitate who will also have +1 burst when it tries to get the Grenzer back up. There's then a 3-trooper link of Spitfire Holoman, Stempler Zond, Perseus, which is really efficient. Some of these pieces are expensive, but you have attack awareness, a specialist, a very resilient gunfighter, a more dangerous short-range gunfighter, smoke. This is just a great fire team if you can afford it. In this list, Rob mixes his Heckler loadouts up, but in this list we have 2 Jammer Fast Pandas to fuel a Vertigo Zond. With the Interventors, there's only one hacker that can spotlight, but she's Whip 15 and has 6 cents. And then we have good old 9-point Motorized Bounty Hunter, Puppet Master Mind Layer, which I like in this list and Rob uses a lot. It gives you a bit of deployment zone defense with the mine. It's 14 points for a regular order, which in Tunguska is kind of what you're going to have to pay generally anyway. And it gives you counterintelligence if you're going first. Then there's 2 Transductor Zonds, a Clockmaker, and a Zondbot. And although I'm not sure about all of the loadouts, I do know that the Clockmaker is in Group 2, and it would spend a lot of Group 2 fixing, basically fixing things up, doing the support thing. So here's a side view of the table. Rob would win the lieutenant role and choose deployment. This deployment zone here was generally more favorable. I would elect to go first. I was playing Dashat company, yes, frontline scoring, etc., but there was no way in this deployment zone that I was going to go second, give Rob the Alpha Strike, etc. Not only was he playing, Tunguska missiles, I know what his links can do, but I'm playing Dashat company, and it's an aggressive situation. In terms of my deployment, a lot would be predicated on where I can put various different pieces. But I would settle on having the She-Have remote up here with the Monstrucker hanging out behind it. You can actually deploy the Monstrucker literally on the side of the building, but she would be just on a little lip down here prone. And I kind of like that. In particular, what is important about this deployment is the Shihab would be up against the edge here, so that the Shihab it's touching the edge, which means that she can touch it without vaulting up over it getting shot, because I did not expect the Shihab to last particularly long. From there, we have basically this space here is where the core link team is going to go. Some of them are nooked down behind this, some of them are in various nooks around here, and the hope for them is that they'll be able to leave that space and move either out and around into the midfield or up onto this building and here, and basically have a reasonable plan of putting a heavy machine gun there and going brr, 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 brr against various different things. Over on what would be my right flank, we're going to have the Rushi hanging out here, the Coom Rider down here, and McMurrough will eventually kind of deploy in the same space once I'm sure that he can have basically a safe landing, or a safe advance up the field. On Rob's side, his Grenzer is going to go up, or is it here? So his Grenzer is going to be up in this space, which has got a couple of things that pose me some problems. The first one is that he's got a really long line across the table to see the Shihab, and that is definitely going to be outside of range of the Shihab's optimal HMG range band. And he can kind of pinch off quite a bit in the midfield as well. It's a very strong position, but it's not perfect. And the main reason why it's not perfect is that this tree here and then these trees here block his line of fire down this direction. Eventually, when you get up to kind of this space here, there will be a means by which he can be engaged, but he's a sniper rifle, and those are good range bands to engage a sniper rifle. That's why McMurrough will reserve drop down here. There are a lot of remotes on rooftops. Some of them are prone, basically providing a picket role. The motorized bounty hunter will deploy down here, guarded by a mine from the puppet master. And then this space here, this safest houses space, the lieutenant does not go there because it's going to be in the link. This is where the clockmaker goes, and it's supporting Perseus and the Hollow Man link, who will deploy around here. So Rob's got the ability to project force from the midfield, right? He'll be able to move his link up and around here and do lots of damage. And he's defensively projecting basically this is a death area. Don't go inside that space until the Grenzer is dealt with. A lot of the first turn would really come down to that. So we'll just have a quick look now at some pictures from the deployment. So here you can see this is the deployment for my heavy infantry team. Now, is this a good deployment generally? Not necessarily, right? This situation, this is real bad. This is missile bait. So is this. But the plan was never that these models would end the turn here. Normally, I am not of the opinion, like deploy assuming you might never move something. But these models have tactical awareness. I am always going to spend 2 orders moving them. So even if those orders are just spent poking him forward, I know they're going to leave this position. And this is the ladder I was talking about that the HMG will hope to move forward. This is the Shihab positioning I described, and you can see the Rafik hanging out down there. And then we have the Shihab itself on the rooftop, and it's just butting up against the edge of the crate there, so that the Monstrucker, if she needs, can walk up this direction. And then finally, on the right flank, here's the Rushi with the Monstrucker's Nazmat, the Coom Rider, my turret, and of course we've got all across the midfield, we've got a whole variety of mimetism through camouflage markers. It's a Libertos on each flank. Essentially in the middle, they won't really do anything. So here's a shot that I've actually taken at the end of the first turn. But what has happened? Well, there have been a few major objectives to pursue, but ultimately this first turn has been about dealing with the Grenzer. And so we've got some safe impetuous movements. And so McMurrough has moved up in this direction, and he's laid some smoke here. And then the Rushi has moved around and forward. Now it's taken a shot from out of, taken a shot from the open, but it's cleared off one of the flash pulse remotes, and then it's moved up and around this way. McMurrough has laid more smoke for it there, and then it's moved up and around here. So from here, it's able to basically go brute and do a bunch of smoke shooting. It puts down another one of the flash pulse remotes, and it engages the Grenzer. And at this range through the smoke, it's basically, oh, hang on a second. No, it doesn't engage the Grenzer, but it clears off. Sorry, this was a day ago, 2 days ago now. It doesn't engage the Grenzer, but it clears off all of the things that would stop a run on the Grenzer. And then good old reliable Coom Rider comes up and around here, breaks smoke there, moves out of the smoke, and 2 templates go into the Grenzer. Now, Rob knows he could dodge here, and he also knows that would be a bad idea. He just takes the shot, kills the Coom Rider, because if the Grenzer dodges, The Coom Rider's just going to keep moving in this direction, and there's an Interventor Lieutenant hanging out there, which would be almost as bad to lose. So the Coom Rider puts 2 shots into the Grenzer, 75% chance to at least, so 50% chance to wound it, 25% chance to kill it, 25% chance to do nothing. It wounds it, but doesn't kill the Grenzer, which puts me in a tricky situation because I really, really need it dead. If the Grenzer lives, that's super bad. And this is something I've actually been running into in games recently, generally, which is I love making these kind of attacks with things like Kumbakas and Libertos, where you go in and you trade them, quote unquote, for pieces that are much more expensive. But if those pieces are recoverable, you can find yourself in a situation where, for example, like the game I had against Nomads, where I knocked Total Reaction Bot unconscious, knocked Pywell unconscious, and then Zoe fixes them. And maybe you have a second Libertos or a second Coom Rider, but you can't keep doing that. You can't keep just spending troops and orders to knock those pieces unconscious. You've got to really put them down. And with a linked paramedic literally hanging out behind the Grenzer, I was not game. It's like as good as the chance for the thing to get back up is, it could still die. I really, really wanted that Grenzer dead. So a lot of the rest of the turn was predicated on trying and failing to kill it. So the link team is one of the first things to go. It's going to move up and around here, and it's going to try and sort of clear the way to get some shots on the Grenzer. It doesn't have many orders left. It's basically got its tackle wearing a little bit left, and terrible, terrible things will happen where the Zuyong will basically fail terribly. I will try and take a fight against the Hollow Man. I will be wounded for my trouble. I will try and do it again. I'll be wounded for my trouble. The paramedic will have to recover me. Very useful. Number 2 on the link team means I don't need to spend a command token to give the paramedic +1 burst. So I do get the Zuyong back up. But he's going to end his turn here having accomplished basically nothing. I do sort of suppress the Hollow Man, and I even then at that point try to take a shot with the Shihab against the Grenzer, but the range is too far. I take the shots and they just go do and whiff. So there's all of this work. I even consider having the Rushi put the damn thing down. But I just don't quite have the orders. I do everything that I possibly can, but for example, when the Rushi has moved up here, and one of the things happened when the Coom Rider moved forward is that a camouflage marker here revealed and placed a Crazy Koala. So it's a Heckler, he placed a Fast Panda, so now my Rushi is in hacking area. So if my Rushi activates, it might get bricked, like etc. etc. I've got the Zuyong trying to put shots down. Basically, the turn kind of goes to hell in a handbasket in the last couple of orders, where I've done the main things I wanted to do. I've put down the ARO pieces, I've killed some Flash Pulse bots, I've knocked the Grenzer out. I've lost, technically speaking, nothing. It isn't a bad first turn, but the Grenzer isn't dead. Now, at this point, I get really lucky. The turn passes to Rob, and he goes to, despite all of my efforts at killing the damn thing, he goes to paramedic it, he hits twice, and he fails both of his rolls. So the Grenzer goes down. At that point, things are much, much, much easier, because now I have the total reaction bot, I have this big sort of area that's being watched under ARO, I even have my HMG here, the core link is intact. Life is now much harder for Rob, but he kind of knows this. He actually feels a bit down at this juncture. But there are things that he can still do, and so one of them is we get to see a proper showcase of the weaknesses of this kind of Dashat company list. So a camouflage marker that's been hanging out about here makes a run. Comes around here. It gets discovered, sort of moving over some flower beds there, but it doesn't care because it's making a one-way run. It's a Heckler. It moves to there. It places a Fast Panda there, and it dies. It dies doing that. It gets suppressive fired by the Rafik, who uses tactical awareness order. It gets shot by other stuff. That doesn't matter. Let's have a look at Rob's repeater area at this point. It's something like that, covering my Rushi, and this, covering almost my entire core link of heavy infantry and my Shihab total reaction bot. Now, for Rob's part, he doesn't have a ton of orders left. He's sort of trying to move his link team around. He's trying to recover some pieces. And mostly what he's doing is he's trying to use his main link to missile the shit out of me. The Interventor and the Vertigo Zond drop missiles first on the Shihab and knock it unconscious, and then second on the Monstrucker. Now I get lucky here and it takes like 2 orders to Spotlight and 2 orders to missile the Monstrucker, but he does get the Monstrucker as well, which means that this defensive position is now out of commission and I can't recover the Rushi if it goes down. But that takes most of his turn. So That's kind of okay. I killed more in my turn than he killed in his, right? And I killed in ARO a heckler, so that's good. Except that now my entire army is inside repeater networks. So we have to figure out what to do about that. So here's how things are looking at the end of my second turn, and as you can see, we've managed to move on. So what's gone on? Well, firstly, this one here we've dealt with using the Rafik. I use irregular order from the second combat group first to move up this direction, and I put 2 shotgun templates into it. If I'd had a combi, I'd have combied it and been like, I sure hope I roll 14s, but templates are nice and reliable. He oblivions me, which is a perfectly reasonable choice, but also what I expected, which is why the Thingo, the Takimoto, whatever it's called, sorry, why it used a regular order so that it had its tactical awareness order left, which I could have used if I had failed to destroy the repeater. I could have used the irregular order as well. Instead, I just used the irregular order to put it into suppressive fire. On the right side, it's more Rushi time and McMurrow time. So McMurrow's been hanging out here. He comes up and around there. He lays some smoke. The Rushi moves into the smoke and puts this heckler down. So we've got 2 dead hecklers now. There's no more fast pandas. The camouflage markers in the midfield are taken care of. I do a little bit more birding with the Rushi, but the main point is that McMurrow is now able to move up and around here and this corner. Remember the Interventor Lieutenant down there is going to die. So McMurrow kills the Interventor Killer Hacker and the Interventor Hacker, which is going to put Rob in Loss of Lieutenant next turn. This link team continues to just faff the hell around and accomplish very, very little, mostly because this single Hollow Man that's hanging out with Perseus and his bros here, even with the Stempler remote going down to the Rushi, I just can't seem to win a face-to-face roll there. Everything else is going more or less okay, but a core linked HMG with burst bonus and +1 ballistic skill, heavy infantry, it just can't win a face-to-face roll to save its life. The main thing that it does this turn is that it moves up to here and back multiple times, fighting and failing to hurt a Hollow Man over here, and every time it does that, it puts like 1 shot into the repeater that's hanging out down here, and eventually brings it down. That's what enables the Rushi to move, that's what enables McMurrow to move, etc. So we have basically a disrupted link team, and Rob is in Loss of Lieutenant. At this point, he basically says, do you want to call the game? We play it out, but it's not an unreasonable thing to ask. What eventually happens is that the Hollow Man and Perseus, like the Hollow Man will be recovered, move up and around here, take some shots, try and take some things down, but as it making the jump up to here, it'll get got by this link. We've got the Paramedic hanging out here, and then a prone HMG here, and to take the fight from this position, he has to fight both. It's too many bursts going back, the Hollow Man gets knocked unconscious, which means that then a Zensha here in my final turn will move up and in extremis recovery him, just to get a 1 classified. I've done very few classified, it's been very challenging this game, it's been very much back and forth murder, but Rob is left with far too few 2 pieces. I'll use my final turn to move some things up and around, the link team will move to kind of occupy this position here, but I don't quite have enough. The Rushi has gone down, it's dead. I don't quite have capacity to push all the way into his zone here. We'll move some Lobotos and stuff up, etc. But ultimately, I will have done Predator with a bonus. Predator with a bonus. I'll have killed 3 models in close combat. I'll have done Extreme Prejudice. That was the 3rd model in close combat. And I'll be securing the HVT. So that is a total of 4 points from classifieds, as well as 3 points. 3 points from controlling zones. I have my zone in the middle, and then Rob has his zone and is unclassified. So that's good, solid game, solid win for Dashat Company, and we'll now move into what will be the shortest of these reports, Game 2 against Shasvastii. So we're back here on this table. This is the same picture as before, because I forgot to take any pictures of this game, which is why this will be the shortest report. This was against Ed playing Shasvastii, and we are playing Firefight. That's right, Firefight. I would play the same list as I showed on screen early on. Just as a reminder, it has a single Ghulam Lieutenant. Did you watch my last video about playing single Ghulam Lieutenants in Firefight? It's a really bad idea. I also made a number of decisions this game that basically was me intentionally trying to do things differently just to see how they work. So for example, in the last game that I played Firefight with a single Ghulam Lieutenant, I used the bonus Bashi Bazook to pretend to be a Ghulam. And I intentionally didn't do that this game, although I probably should have. I was going first, but And that was really the only reason I did. If I hadn't been going first, there's no way that I would have. We also agreed that I would play on this side, even though it was the better side, probably because I played on this side previously. Now, what happens here basically is the game can be exchanged, basically described almost in the first turn back and forth. Ed tried to deploy his speculo and failed, and so she would end up down here on the back table edge, very close to a camouflage marker there, which was also near a camouflage marker here. There is a lot of defense that gets put in this space here. There are 2 Taiga creatures and I think 2 Icadrons that are defending this approach, but I am able to basically Thunderbolt from God this direction with a Libertos and a Coom Rider and McMurra. So all 3 of those pieces push up this area here. These defenses that Ed has in place actually hold really, really, really well. Like, Taigas will do that. I don't lose anything. I don't kill very much either, but I get McMurra to here, and then he spec fires a grenade over the wall. He actually does that twice. Why does he spec fire a grenade? Because there's that speculo down there. He's targeting her, but he's hitting this marker here, which is very obviously a mentor lieutenant. And indeed, it attempts to dodge, it's a mentor lieutenant, and I kill it on the second grenade. That's about all that I actually accomplished on the first turn, but in Firefight, that's really, really good. Because in Firefight, you get points for killing lieutenants, and there's no reinforced tactical link. The problem is that Ed is running Cadmus. I know Ed is running Cadmus, I'm prepared for him to run Cadmus, but it is still really, really difficult to defend against Cadmus. During my turn, I've done things like I've laid down mines with the Monstrucker, I've got the She-Had Total Reaction bot here, and he still manages to basically defang the mines with 1 decoy. So the real Cadmus lands here, the decoy goes boop down there, sets off both mines because they're landing on 15s, and then the second one lands basically down here, runs around and puts 2 shots into my lieutenant. Puts it down. That is about all Ed accomplishes, apart from standing up a Gwalio. By the way, don't take Gwalio HMGs, they're not very good. He stands it up, tries to fight the She-Hab, gets crit, and dies. Good job, Gwalio. That is the expected performance of a Gwalio in most games. So, hey, She-Had Total Reaction Bot does cool things. But I'm in loss of lieutenant. Now, I have been spending most of my first turn saying, I'm going to save all 4 of these command tokens because I'm going to be in loss of lieutenant, which was totally true. Then I do a very stupid thing. So the stupid thing that I do is, there's an unconscious Rushi here. There is a helper bot behind it. The Monstrucker spends her irregular order and moves the helper bot to repair the Rushi. I need to roll a 13. The Rushi is unconscious level 2 because it's been Sheshkin that was shooting her. I fail and spend a command token and reroll. And fail and reroll. And fail and reroll. And fail and reroll. And fail and reroll. Or whatever it is. I spend all 4 command tokens. I do recover the Rushi, but I was saving those command tokens very specifically because I was going to be in loss of lieutenant. So now I'm spending a turn in loss of lieutenant with I have a Rushi back, I can't spend any orders, and I have absolutely no capacity to really do anything with my turn using those command tokens. I do have capacity to move the link around a little bit, it takes some gunfights, but I pretty much have to take the entire turn off apart from trying to press 1 button and move some things forward because I haven't saved those tokens. The Rushi was not worth 4 regular orders this turn. This was a dumb thing to do. I wanted to try it, fair enough, useful experiment. My initial instinct that I would need those command tokens was correct. So basically, not a lot happens here, and then Ed goes into his turn. He has his lieutenant again. I've made, by the way, the Zencha has climbed up to there. It is now my LT. And then Sheshkin basically runs around going wobble, 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 discovering and shooting, trying to discover and shoot things. She successfully discovers the Zencha but doesn't kill it. She fights the core link that's moved up to here and doesn't really kill it. Runs back down and around. And the whole game state basically at this point is getting really, really messy. I lose McMurra. I don't lose the Libertos and I don't lose the Coom Rider. But, you know, basically it's just a hot mess of a turn. He moves some things around, I move some things around. I lose the Rushi again. Of course I do. How many orders do you think it takes Sheshin to kill the Rushi again? Exactly 1. But we go into my final turn, and I've done some attritional damage. We have an even number of lieutenants killed. I've done some classifieds. So basically the entire turn is spent with, and I've obviously, again, I've killed his silly Gwalio in ARO. The entire turn, effectively speaking, is spent with the core link closing in on Sheshkin from all angles and eventually putting her down. She goes down and I have like 1 order left, which is used to 2 orders left, which are used to press press some panoplies, flip the turn. There's not really much that Ed can do, and what we have basically is a very, very narrow win. Ed has lost 0 specialists. I have lost, I think, 2. So he has more specialist kills. I have more army kills, although it is close. We have an even number of lieutenant kills, and I've done very slightly more classifieds. Ed stops me from securing. His HVT is here. I'm securing it very heavily, but he is able to stop me from doing so and do 1 classified himself. So it's like I think I win by exactly the 1 point from opening more panoplies. It's something like a 5-4 win. Really close game, even with Ed taking a Gwalios, because he is very, very good at using these Cadmus seeds to run in and wreak absolute havoc. After the game, we had a quick conversation, which basically went something in the veins of, I've been thinking about Shasvastii, and maybe I will just play Combined Army instead, which was a statement that sent chills down my spine, because the more that I see Ed play these interesting things in Shasvastii, yeah, there are availability advantages in Shasvastii, but I'm increasingly coming to the conclusion that the Mine Layer Speculo, as interesting as she is not necessarily better than the Boarding Shotgun one. And if you're willing to take a Boarding Shotgun one, or for example, a Greif Operator, which Ed fucking loves, you can just play Vanilla Combined, and there's still 1 Cadmus seeded Vanilla Combined, plus other drop troops like the Rasyat or the Tariot. Even Fracta are really, really good. Like, a lot of the things Ed wants to do, he will be able to do in Vanilla. He still has Tagas, he's not running Links in this list, and rather than something like Agualio and Sheshkin is really good, by the way, news at 11, he could replace some of those pieces with something like a Chironted MSV heavy machine gun, which would have made this a much, much more difficult game. So, you know, early game Terror Mission Shasvastii Ed has been upgraded potentially to mid-game Terror Mission Vanilla Combined Ed, but in this one we did squeak through a very narrow victory, which carries us into round 3. So the good news about round 3 is that 1, it was a quick game. We were actually playing on clock, we were playing quickly, and 2, I remembered to take pictures of this one. First, though, the list. This is a Kyle list. It's a Kyle special, has many of the things that he loves, including the hated reaction Zond. We've got Jazz, Billy, Zoe, Pywell, Zonbot. Zoe's going to try and repair the reaction Zond as well as just being excellent. And then these are some out of this first combat group, or at least what I put in the combat group 1. Again, not totally sure about combat groups here. This is something of an adaptation for the scenarios we were playing, right? We're going to play Decapitation this round. Remember, we've just played Firefight, and then before that we played Frontline. So for both his Firefight and his Decapitation lists, Kyle took a Taskmaster Lieutenant. I'm going to say I think this is a mistake. And to be more specific, I think it is a mistake to try and take a very expensive kind of durable lieutenant and then not use it. Just like generally. The idea is you're playing Decapitation and Firefight where there are points for lieutenant kills. You're going to try and deny your opponent those points by having a really resilient lieutenant. But you are putting yourself massively on the back foot by spending 47 points on a piece that is going to basically just throw out 2 crazy koalas using lieutenant orders and then do nothing. For a Taskmaster to be worthwhile, you have to be active with them. You can't be passive with 47 points of a list. You need to use those points. And if you're not using those points, you're disadvantaged. And it's like, imagine if this was a moderator. Literally just a single moderator in Decapitation, but let's add 1 more moderator in to make the list not be a Rob-style death trap in Firefight. Those spare points could turn this Gecko easily into a Gator. And I like geckos, I love geckos, but there is a world of difference between a Gecko and a Gator. Yeah, you'd have to find some SWC, blah, 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 don't care. Like 47 points, you'd have one of the SWC by turning this Taskmaster into something else. This I think was a trap. I think this was a trap and it did him no favors. Although he was doing well over the course of the day so far. Otherwise, hey look, it's 2 Morans, it's a Vertigo Zond. There's a 0 with Boarding Shotgun here. I love this for 19 points, totally awesome. I would love a Libertos more, but there's really no troop slots for it because we have 2 Morlogs, which are just fantastic. And then we have a Hellcat. Hellcat with a Boarding Shotgun is a piece that I love, and it's a piece that Kyle has been using of late. Really any Hellcat. He had 1 in his other list for Frontline and Firefight that could do more classifieds. But it's veteran or elite medium infantry that turns up where it wants to, lands on 15s with no help. The fact that it doesn't need support, right? Like it doesn't need an Evo hacker to help it land. You just roll the dice at 24 points. Hellcats are fantastic, and really, if you can fit them in Nomad lists, the only reason that you couldn't or can't is just because of troop slots, as far as I'm concerned. They're awesome. So there are a lot of things I like about this list, but the Taskmaster is something that I don't. So here's our table for this mission, and I've gone left to right here again. I win the roll and I snap pick first turn. This would be my deployment zone, and this would be Kyle's. What you can see here basically are there's lots of ways to move across rooftops. These buildings can be accessed. The building do not have this is the only building with an interior space, but these buildings can be accessed by at the doorway. Use a short movement skill and you will appear above the doorway. So the rooftops are quite accessible. There's lots of cover in the deployment zones, etc. Lots of big shadows, but there are some fairly big angles of fire as well. And to just show that, I'll move to my deployment zone point of view. So here's the shot from my deployment zone, and because we've got 16-inch deployment zones, we can see the Shehab total reaction bot here has some really lovely lines of fire. It can see down to there, and it can just about see down this long line there, although anything that's in this space will be able to easily move past it, and anything here could move up to engage it from a fairly favorable range. But it's in probably the best position. I can put it in there with a lot of potential, in particular to pin back Morlocks. I've once again been really aggressive with my Mimetism 3 camouflage markers. They're all hanging out over there, sort of like behind that line, in front of that line. And the reason for that is that I'm trying to push his crazy koalas back. I quite like deploying things like Libertos first against Nomads if I can, because you really can. You can bracket the midfield and stop the crazy koalas from being placed in positions where they can trigger. A lot of the koala coverage really is back on his deployment zone. We've got the first HVT here, the second HVT here. Those are quite nice positions for that. Rushi, again, unlinked is here. Monstriker is here. And then the core link is almost all on this rooftop apart from one digger on ground level. Their plan is to move, if they can, move up and around here with the second digger taking position behind this or covering this HVT. And once again, this is a position that is not good under normal circumstances, right? So we can see this whole link is clustered on this rooftop. Absolute missile bait. But I always have two orders if I need to maneuver them. So they can, de-missile bait themselves if they need to. This is a starting line position. I would not deploy this way if I wasn't going first, and I would not deploy this way if it was not a link with lots of tactical awareness. For Kyle's part, his reaction zone is here, looking at mine. There's a helper bot behind it, and then this rooftop is important because Zoe is hanging out down here, and Pywell is there, and then Jazz is hanging out back there. Taskmaster is hanging out behind this thing here, and the Gecko will eventually deploy as a reserve piece, watching the back table edge, basically somewhere like that. Now, I'm going first here, and this first turn is really a textbook. We're actually playing on clock, so all of this happens in like 20 minutes total time, but it is a first turn that I'm really, really happy with. So McMurray has been my reserve. He impetuous up to here, but he just impetuously yeets smoke to there. And then the Rushi once again proves its worth unlinked. I'm super happy running it this way. It just runs up this way, and it puts down Pywell. And the Link team, I consider taking the shot against the Rushi, but I decide with the Rushi against the reactions on. But I decide, since I have attack aware order, I will first stand up my core link Zuyong and take the fight that took 7 orders or something to do last game. I played against Kyle, but this time I take it out in 1. And so I use the tactical awareness order because I really want more orders in my first combat group because I have things to do. And those things are McMurray doing McMurray things. So he moves up and around this way. Basically, he just blows through. Like there's the Zero here and Billy there. He just blows through them. He actually doesn't even kill the Zero. He doesn't care about it. He moves up, around, and past, up here into melee with Zoe and puts her down. And this is the linchpin, right? Killing Zoe means that the reaction zone cannot stand back up. And because the reaction zone can't stand back up, I am no longer going to have spent all of this time killing this thing only for it to reappear. And since McMurray is up there, he pops down there and he kills Jazz as well. So in the first turn, I've knocked Pywell unconscious, but he's probably dead now. I've knocked the reaction zone unconscious, it can't come back. And I have killed both hackers and the engineer. I haven't really touched. Like there's Morans hanging around here and hanging around, I don't know, back here or something. So the one there. Haven't touched the Gecko, haven't touched anything else, but that is still a lot of damage. And in particular, what's important to recognize is that it is damage to capability. These Morans, the one that is here and the one that is here, are now just massively less useful because there's no hackers to use their repeaters. This Vertigo Zone that's hanging out down here is massively less useful because there's no way to spotlight anything. He's going to have to forward observe with Morans. These unconscious remotes that are banking on their remote presence and an engineer to bring them back are permanently down now. So almost at a stroke, right? This was one of the most effective first turns I've had in some time. Almost at a stroke, the entire Nomad list has been unpinned, and there's really just not very much that can be done about it. It was too much damage, and in particular, it was the clinical removal of critical pieces. I killed 4 things this turn. Four kills is a really, really good first turn, right? Not to mess about. 4 kills is a good first turn in a 15 trooper list. But they were 4 kills on like just about the best 4 things I could kill. The reactions on and Pywell means there's no more aero. Pywell's a pain in the ass aero piece, by the way, because of mimetism, marksmanship, etc. I've lost, like, I've consistently screwed around trying to fight this thing with something that doesn't have an MSV. The reactions on going down means that I now have total board dominance. Just about, like it's just the Gecko. And then the hackers and engineer going down means that all of these pieces are now less useful. Kyle does the best he can, but we see basically the return of the curse of the total reaction bot. So the Gecko moves up and around here, takes this position here. The Brushi's moved back by this point, and so the first thing that it sees is the Shihab. And then it spends like 5 orders fighting the Shihab, doesn't injure it, and takes 2 wounds. 1 wound maybe, but still. This is a thing that total reaction bots will do sometimes. This is why I am putting a total reaction bot in my list, because it can randomly just stall out an entire game. It's kind of the reverse drop troop in that respect, right? Like if you heard me just talk about the Hellcat, 24 points in it might just win you a game on the attack. For a total reaction bot, 24 points, 1 SWC, and a 12-point Monstrucker, and it might just win you the game on the defense. And it stalled the Gecko the hell out and trapped it there in no man's land. So Kyle basically did not have a turn. He did not accomplish anything because he had to push past the Shihab. He couldn't move his Morlocks. One of them is down here in line of fire of the Shihab, and the other one is up here on the rooftop. If it stands, it gets shot by everything, including the Shihab. So he has to move the Gecko forward, and it can't do the job. So we go into my second turn here, and we're basically in I am far enough ahead that I can just play very, very aggressively, almost to the point of meme. We will move various different bits and pieces forward. The Takimoto remote that sort of just used attack aware last turn will move around. It'll kill it will kill one of his designated targets. It'll actually move up through here, kill the Moran as well, and will, like, that opens the way for the Zensha to move up, climb over this, and kill the Vertigo Zond. I will use the Libertos to kill the Moran here. I will use this Libertos to kill this Moran, and I think I might use the Kumran for that as well, this Moran and this this HVT. So that's both HVTs down. And then from here, the Link team will move forward, and McMurrough will move around. And McMurrough, in particular, is going to push his way around this way and then berserk into the Gecko. And he will actually spang the roll, but the Crazy Koala the Crazy Koala that I talk shit about Taskmaster playing will take him down, but he will wound the Gecko, and then this Core Link will basically move up aggressively. They will put the Gecko down, and at that point, all that Kyle has left basically is Morlocks. I have undisputed firepower superiority, which means that I can afford to do basically meme shit like this. So here we can see where the Gecko was, where McMurrough is unconscious, and then this is how my Link team is standing. Don't deploy Link teams like this unless your opponent has literally no guns, but my opponent has literally no guns. So we have Core Linked Combi Rifle, Core Linked Combi Rifle, Core Linked HMG, just watching the entire table. So really my only goal was just to make sure that there was absolutely no chance that, like, Morlocks or anything else, you can actually see this Morlock here, we're trying desperately to consider a run along this pathway, basically lock my opponent out of the game. There is no retreat in Decapitation, which means that there is no risk whatsoever on stepping on the next as hard as possible. It's kind of like one of the things about the scenario. And really all I am doing is trying to set up for this Taskmaster to be ready to die next turn. And that's basically the story of how this game will round out. This is an older picture here. I didn't take a picture of turn 3. But what will happen is that this Link team will... Kyle can't really do much. This Link team will come out, it will revive McMurrough, it will move up and around, guns will move forward, and McMurrough will get into the Taskmaster and kill it. And I think that actually puts Kyle on 0 models left on the table. Maybe this Morlock is still alive at this point, but there is effectively nothing left. So it's a very clean... He brings the Hellcat on, and it kills this HVT, and then it will die to my heavy machine gun over here. So that leaves it as Kyle has scored 2 points, because he's got this designated target here. But you always do that, always try and score points if you can. But I have killed both of his more lieutenants, way more army points. So that is a comfortable 10-2 win to round out the day. Overall, I really like this list. The stars, like in every individual game, different things were stars. The Rushi was running around unlinked with an engineer to help it out, even without an Evo hacker to support it. Worked really, really, really well. Was super happy with that. So the unlinked Rushi, I think, is going to continue to be a staple of my Dashat lists. The core link was expensive. It was good. Like, it was fine. It did do the thing that will happen sometimes, which is like, this is effectively a build your own HRMC, BS14, burst 5. That's pretty good. It's only armor 3, it's only damage 15. It will fail plenty of the time, but the whole army isn't predicated around it. What it mostly does is it functions in a support role for all of the actual hero pieces, which are the Libertos, the Tomb Raiders, McMurrough, etc. So this was a good fun list. I would like to experiment, I think, with the Zensha becoming the Panzerfaust profile. I don't know what I'll use the other 2 points for. I genuinely can't think of anything that I would spend 2 points on in this list, and I don't want to cut a helper bot. I don't want to downgrade the Tomb Raider, just have a chain rifle. So I'm really not sure what the 2 points go on, but I want to try the submachine gun Zensha anyway, because the Panzerfaust, I think, is really interesting there. Shock mines I don't particularly care about. They're cool, it's nice to have. But I would like to have the threat of like these 5 camouflage markers in the midfield. What if one of them is a BS12 Panzerfaust? That could be really, really interesting. So that's something that I might try next, although we're probably going to be heading back into some Islam games. Anzac Cup is coming up. I am not actually sure I can attend, but if I can, I would like to play Hack Islam for it, because I haven't played Hack Islam really in any Infinity event ever, apart from the occasional small Timfinity event. I've played them for a very long time now, and I've always been kind of too chicken shit to take them to event and have a crack at the top tables. So we will see. Might also see some custom scenarios, as the Anzac Cup has a number of custom scenarios being played for it. But in any case, I hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you next time.